Welcome back to another ProGuides Wild Rift video, and for today we'll show you the absolute best high elo champions you can think of. So without making you wait any longer, let's just start with the first one. Olaf. Olaf is one of those picks that really shine when it comes down to beating people up, and especially if you combine this character with a Lulu, you're in for some crazy 2v8 action. So what does this champion make so good? First, it's his jungle clear. Contrary to the League PC version, in this version of the game he loves using his third ability to deal AoE damage in the form of true damage to jungle camps. It might sound insane, but normally other champions have damage reduction on their cleaving auto attacks. So the auto attacks deal AoE damage, but it's reduced. However, for the true damage of the E of Olaf, it's not reduced, so it deals the full damage every single time to every target that is in the circle. So if you think about that later on, and if the enemy team is stacking, well, that's a lot of burst damage if you ask me. But why would you pick Olaf? Olaf is primarily picked into heavy CC comps that would otherwise just stun you, CC you in any kind of other way and just make you useless. So when you're facing, for example, a Varus, don't shy away from this champion. However, if it's an AP Varus and he knows what he's doing, he can literally one-shot you whatever items you have. Nonetheless, Olaf can build very tanky and still destroy any carry in the 1v1. And if you ask me, that is not really fair. But there's something very important about the Olaf that people usually don't know about. Even though we got the bonus mana regen in jungle, it's still not enough to let him maintain his first ability on cooldown. He cannot really spam it because he'll literally run out of mana. So in the jungle, go for your third ability and abuse this because it literally doesn't cost any mana but only HP, which you'll regen up thanks to your second ability anyway. And well, you're a bit faster with the third ability whatsoever. And now let's move on to our question of the day, as it's time to ask you something. Did you hit the sub button already? Cause if not, you're going to miss out on a lot of upcoming challenger and pro player certified content. And for our question of the day, what champion do you want to learn to play next? Let us know in the comments below. And now it's time for our next pick, and for this we have Diana. Diana is a super tanky, basically assassin and mage at the same time, and deals tons of damage in the frame of a second. So whenever you see this champion, be aware of what it can do in the right hands, of course. And that's specifically why this champion is better suited for the higher elo bracket. It's just so easy to get things done if you're good on it, and if you have a team to play around, well, you best believe this champion can 1v9 every single game. But there's also a few things you have to take advantage of. Your champion goes Rod of Ages first, which means you'll buy a catalyst whatsoever at a certain point in time. Which means, yet again, that if we are facing a ranged champion into which we can't really trade, we can start with a Ruby Crystal. This Ruby Crystal will help us survive lane more easily and allow us to go for more risky plays as we hit the level 2 to level 3 mark. We are also more safer in regards of jungle ganks, as we are also able to run barrier at the same time, which effectively grants us 50% increased HP at level 3. That's quite a lot. And for laning in general, you have to think about what your champion can do. Remember that your Moonlight resets your third ability, which means if you tag the minions with your first ability and the enemy champion, you can go in for a fast trade and then just bounce and say nope, and you're out again. And this all happens in literally an instant. But however tanky you may get with this champion, there's something you have to remember. You are still some kind of an assassin, and if you get caught off guard and chain CC'd, you will eventually die. And if you get your ultimate cancelled, it is quite painful to witness. So in fights you have to wait patiently for your opportunities. And that is something every assassin has to do. And the same also goes for Diana. Unless of course you're ridiculously fat and can just one-shot anything or everybody in your way. So let's hope you get to that Rod of Ages rabbit on spike super fast so you can start doing so. And with all that said, we move on to our third champion of this list, and this is Khazix. Yet again, an assassin, so you might get the pattern right. So a lot of assassins are broken in solo queue, and that for good reason, because they usually share one specific thing. If they get 1 or 2 kills, they ridiculously start snowballing throughout the game and one-shot everything in their way. So yeah, the same thing applies to Khazix, even though he doesn't even need a kill, he only needs to hit level 5. Cause Khazix as a champion isn't really a champion until he hits level 5, but why so? Khazix needs the cooldown reduction from his first ability to really start dealing damage, otherwise it's just a nuke that happens every few seconds. but with the evolved first ability, it happens every single time plus the range increase. It's just insane and he can do anything he wants at that point because nobody can really face him. It's just too funny. But there's also something about the play pattern of Khazix as a champion. With his ability to evolve, he completely changes his game style from level 5 to level 9 to level 13, simply for the fact because he can do anything he wants. So let's imagine you take the first evolve on your first ability, which means any duel is now yours. But what about the second evolve? What could you do here? So generally speaking, in this game, the ultimate evolve isn't really something you take, it's just not worth it most of the time. On the PC version, you'd go for it first and a lot of times. However, here we mostly have to make the decision between the second and the third ability. So what is the difference between both of them? Evolving your spikes grants you the ability to play into anything you want. Because now you're a ranged champion, you can peel, you can engage and you can annoy people non-stop. However, by taking the third ability's evolve, so your wings, you are now able to assassinate people from super high distance. And if you start assassinating them and you get the kill, you'll reset and you'll be out of harm's way in an instant. However, failing that will result in instantaneous death. And once you hit level 13, you basically evolve what you haven't evolved yet, so either the wings or the spikes. And the best thing about the Khazix, once you hit that level 13, you're a 1v9 machine. Getting to that level allows you to do anything at any point of the game. You can engage as you want, you can assassinate as you want, and you can kill basically anything you see. And even the most dire looking games are winnable with this champion. But you need to play very well for that, because making a single mistake results in you dying and then your loss of the game. And taking that error into account, we also move on to our fourth champion, which is also the reason why this champion should only be played in the higher elo brackets. On this champion, autocasting is a death sentence. You need to learn to cast your spells manually as much as possible. The reason for that is simple. If you are familiar with the logic behind Irelia's first ability, you might be able to understand. Because if you don't do it manually, clicking it or just tapping it will force you to jump onto targets you maybe even didn't want to jump on. And if you don't get a reset on your first ability and you're there without any stacks of your passive, you're just a minion. And to stop that from happening, you need to get accustomed to it as fast as possible and as good as possible. Nonetheless, once you hit your full stacks of your passive ability, just getting in range to auto-attack the enemy usually is enough to win you the fight because, well, you have a lot of attack speed and a lot of bonus magic damage, plus the Blade of the Rune King you'll build anyway, so who can really fight you? Unless you mess up, of course. And with that said, Trinity Force is a bait on that champion. Rather go for Blade of the Rune King into a death stance, or for example a Wit Sand if you play into heavy AP. However, with the death stance you're quite sturdy and you have the bonus attack damage from the Blade of the Rune King among the HP and damage from the other items. So dying is not an option, but killing the enemy will become a very reasonable option. And here's also something mechanical about Irelia. If you play Irelia, think about what you're going to do next. So rather than just throwing your E out for fun, think about it in this way. What about casting your E1 into your R and then cast Q X amount of times into then casting E2? The enemy will be slowed and they'll be forced to respond whatsoever. And the best thing is, if you hide your E1 into the fog or wall or brush or anywhere they can't see it, they'll think your E2 is your E1 and then they'll be stunned anyway and you'll get the free kill instantly. It's not easy to pull off, so practice it and abuse it. But now let's move on from this difficult champion to a more easy champion. However, still not the easiest among all of those champions. For number 5, we have Rakan, and Rakan's engage is insane and reliable at the same time. On level 5, it's almost impossible to mess it up. It's just too easy and too powerful. But with those opportunities come responsibilities. If you miss or mess up anything, you hurt your team a lot, because Rakan's cooldowns are quite high. So if you happen to mess it up, well, you stand there with your pants down. And depending on what you're facing in lane, you can even make decisions like taking Electrocute, which sounds quite a troll, but Aftershock is usually the mastery you want to go to. And for the gameplay in lane, most of the time you have to chill up until level 3, which grants you full access to all abilities and makes your champion fully functional. Otherwise, just level 2 is enough if you take your second and third ability. And if you go for a super all-in level 1, which is super flippy and super risky by the way, just your second ability is enough. But as the game goes on, Rakan turns into a force to be reckoned with. Rod of Ages and Khazix make him and his linked ally deal absurd amounts of damage. Just the Rod of Ages alone increases the potency of Rakan by a lot. And since Rod of Ages has a lot of HP and Khazix grants a lot of resistances for armor and magic resist, it makes him even more sturdy by granting him more effective HP. Just in case you're not familiar with what Khazix actually does, here, take a look at the item and see for yourself how busted it is. And once you hit those later stages of the game, if you hit anyone with your ultimate or your W, it's very likely that they're going to die instantly. And escaping an engage by a Rakan is not one of the easiest things because it's just so fast, and you have to remember we are playing mobile, so the ping and the overall connection isn't always the best. And that wraps up today's video. Thank you all for watching, hit the sub button and catch you tomorrow for another Wild Rift video.